Hi, welcome everyone to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. Today we have Christine Heath and Mark Howard with us. Christine Heath is a licensed marriage and family therapist in both Hawaii and Minnesota, as well as a master addictions counselor, nationally certified addictions counselor, and an AAMFT approved supervisor. A co-founder of the Hawaii Counseling and Education Center, Christine's been helping people to understand the three principles for nearly 40 years. She provides clinical services, professional training, clinical supervision, and is a consultant to businesses and for mental health and substance abuse professionals. She is a sought-after world-renowned speaker on the three principles. Mark Howard, PhD, is founder of the Three Principles Institute in Burlingame, California. He's a licensed psychologist and is recognized as one of the pioneers who first brought the three principles into the field of psychology. For 33 years, Dr. Howard's been sharing the principles in mental health, addiction, businesses, and nursing. He's now devoting his time in mentoring and supporting anyone who wishes to share the principles with love, clarity, and impact. So thank you both for coming and joining us today. Really excited to hear what you have to say, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, Bonnie, thanks for that. With all of our years combined, I'd like you all to know that Christine and I started very, very young in life.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
When we were 14 and 15.
Yeah, don't let my gray hair fool you at all. But I love that we have that much time here with you. I mean, not time talking with you, but both of us have had that length of time, both with Sydney Banks himself, but also in our own trying to understand the principles and deepen that for ourselves. And really, both of us staying pure to that message and the meaning of the principles. So we're happy to be here.
Aloha, everybody from Hawaii. Yeah, I just want to echo what Mark just said, because we had a little interesting experience getting on today. And I was also very grateful because I thought back to my previous time where I would have probably had a major meltdown before getting on. And, you know, it's interesting how even after all these years, we're able to really feel gratitude for what we know. I know a lot of people that have been a therapist as long as we have are so like jaded and bored with their work and, you know, not very optimistic or hopeful. So one of the things that this understanding really brings to us is a constant joy of helping people and that power of hope that the principles bring to relieve stress, but also to help people that are seriously ill. So it goes across the board. It just really helps everybody.
Well, that's beautiful, Christine, because I really do think the first night I listened to Sydney Banks, it woke up hope in me. You know, hope that I could live happy and trouble-free. And, you know, what he said woke up an insight for me. And I knew that if I could understand what Sydney Banks was pointing to, I could be happy, and I could really bring my clients to realize their true nature. And I really do think, you know, this is an understanding where you, living in your life, in all of your roles, including any of your work, that you're human like everyone else. You and the clients you see are the same. And you're all using thought and consciousness to create your experience of life in that moment. And as Chris was saying, what that helped me and Chris and other practitioners is to be able to be of service to anyone, no matter how serious they look. we knew in our hearts that they were connected to mind and they had the capacity to realize mental health. And that changes you as someone who's trying to help another person find their own well-being. So this is a very hopeful approach. The message is very hopeful. Christine, did you want to go with where we wanted to start today? Although we've already started.
Yeah, it's so much for our plans. We start talking and then there's a different force kind of going through us. But we actually really wanted to get some feedback from people about what would be helpful for you. So if anybody has anything in particular, we've got some ideas about what we can talk about. Unfortunately or fortunately, Mark and I don't have any trouble talking, but we'd really also like to know if there's anything, if you have any questions, if there's something you'd like us to talk about in particular, or if you just want us to kind of punt and go with what we were thinking, we're happy to do that. So does anybody have anything that you're interested in hearing? Because usually like interactions with people are more inspiring for us. And also I think they're more alive for people. So the more we can have people interact, the better I think the whole webinar becomes.
Yes, Boyan?
Boyan, yes.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, and thank you for doing this and for your time. Me and Ivan, I don't know if you've heard of him, but we are trying to spread the three principles in Bulgaria.
Oh.
And we did an event 2 weeks ago, and 2 questions came up to which we, at the end of the event, so we didn't have much time to answer, but we also didn't really know how to answer. The first one was, what is right and wrong if everything is just a thought? So how do we differentiate what's good and bad, right and wrong, etc.? And the second is, what is the purpose of intuition in the three principles?
Wow, those are good questions. Good thing they came up at the end of your conference. I usually like to take a lunch break when those kinds of questions come.
Yeah, I understand that.
First, when you have questions like that, you want to go back to what you know. You just want to go back to what is it that you know. In terms of the right and wrong, I could tackle that first, in the sense that, first of all, you have to see that the principles are spiritual. So they don't have comments on right and wrong. Really, they're just giving you the power to live in your life, guided by wisdom, and to know your life through the power of thought and consciousness. So really, if you look at this formless nature of this energy, or the spiritual nature of this energy, they're not dealing with human thinking, like, what's right or wrong, or when do I know I've got wisdom, or things like that. So that's the first thing you want to help people see. You want to help people move back toward this is spiritual, that we're trying to understand something that is formless, and it's sometimes they're not about the particular conditions of life. Now, the other thing that I love in what Sydney Banks has always said about this when it comes down to these kinds of human questions is that it's common sense. It's common sense. And that helps a lot, because I think if we're truly living from the true nature of us, of love and understanding, and from our wisdom, we'll see that in those feelings, we don't intend any harm to any human being or living thing on our planet. And so we really see deeper from that spiritual sense how to live right. you know, and also we can realize through thought when communities of people are up against hardships and they're up against difficulties in life. We can see that. And, you know, from that deeper essence, we're kind of called on to help that, like Roger Mills was, one of the early teachers of this understanding. He was called on to right the wrong of community circumstances through this understanding. So that's my take on that issue of right and wrong.
It's funny because I remember I would get thinking too much really with Sid, and I'd ask him what I thought was kind of a profound question like that. And he'd look at me and he'd go, geez, Chris, just use your common sense. And it's like,
Yeah.
you know, and that's really an important thing. Like, you just got to use your common sense. If you're going with the feeling of love, if you're going with the energy of life, you yourself are in a good feeling. And that's kind of how you can, like, sometimes like, it's not about positive or negative. I think sometimes people get caught up in that because, I mean, personally, I think that people, when they have addictions, are some of the most positive thinkers in the world. Now, whether their thinking is particularly helpful to them or is wise to them, that's another question. But they're generally always thinking, I can quit anytime I want to. It's not really a problem. I mean, so it's not about the content of thinking. So good and bad to me is whether you're going with the energy of life, whether you're going with love, or whether you're going with insecurity. And that you can always tell by the feeling of the person. If they're awake and alive and connected and coming from a place of life, then you're not going to want to do anything that would hurt somebody else. And you also have better vision. So when you're insecure, your thinking kind of does like this. Bill Pettit always does like this, like it's a blinder. And you can't really see what you're doing because you're so caught up in your own reality and your own thinking about it that people frequently do things that are not helpful to other people. That's why I was listening to this guy on National Public Radio yesterday, and he was talking about inventions that people create and how they create these things to help the world, and then 20 years later we realize that this thing that we create actually causes another problem. But we can't really see it yet. And so the best we can do as a human being is to be in the best state of mind we can and then come from that feeling. And then we might have to make an adjustment later on. It's like, that's just the nature of evolution, is that the best thinking we have is just what we can see in the moment. That's it. Otherwise we would have no problems. We'd already live in love because everybody would know that that's a place to be. So that's kind of my take on that is, remember, when people ask those questions, they're just like really thinking too much about it instead of using their common sense. And actually the first book that was written, not even on the principles, as Mark said, by Dr. Mills, was called Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense.
Yeah. Well, this is beautiful. I don't, as you can see, as Christine said, both she and I can talk a bit. So we want to leave room for other people. But again, I just wanted to remind you, Boyan, that you get questions like this, you want to go back inside you. And you don't want to try to answer it at that content level. You want to go back, just say, well, what is my point here? What do I know? And then speak from there. And as you speak from there, you'll start to see more for that answer.
Right.
So I hope this was helpful.
Yes.
And it's also totally okay, Boyan, to say, that's a really good question. Let me reflect on that.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to know everything. We don't know anything. People are going to ask things that you've never thought of before.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be okay with not knowing. And trust that if you see how the principles work, the answer would come to you.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
So are you good with intuition? You
Oh,
asked also about intuition, because intuition is just a word that we use for people being able to kind of trust their wisdom or information that we get from wisdom. You know, I think you have to be careful when people ask that question, at least in my experience, is that sometimes people are talking about people that are clairvoyant or have all these things that really are not proven to be real. But people frequently will say that they knew something and they didn't know they knew it at the time. So, you know, you'll say something to somebody and then say, oh, I knew I shouldn't have said that. Yeah. That's a frequent thought in my mind, but you know, you say something comes out your mouth and before it comes out, that your wisdom tells you very clearly, don't say that. And you say it anyway. So to me, it's like a combination of really intuition is really that knowing, which could be present in the moment, like don't take another step because something's there. Or it could be like, oh, I think I want to become a scuba diver. And I'll, you know, something like that, that it's just like an insight about something in your life.
I think you raised the point that for me goes to how to answer questions. And I really think that it's just not up to you. This is for everybody. You want to listen before you answer. So what Christine shared helped me see this, because somebody asked me, you know, what's intuition by the three principles? If I don't ask them what they mean by that, I have to make assumptions about what they mean by intuition. And as Christine said, they may be talking about the psychic reader they just went to, you know, over the weekend. And so it helps if you could listen a bit before you try to answer questions. And that'll help you too, because the intelligence of mind is at work there in you and in that group. So I would usually want to just inquire a bit in terms of what do they mean by intuition, or what do they mean by right and wrong. And if you listen to that without you having opinions, just try to get a feel for what they're about. That helps you. So I would recommend that for all of you, to look more at listening before you try to answer. Because again, you know, the logic of that is we're all mind. You and that group are all connected to mind. And if you can really connect with that person in terms of what they're really wanting to hear, the intelligence of mind will guide you. So it isn't all up to you to kind of come up with the answer. That's what was so nice about Christine saying it's okay to reflect. Reflection just allows the intelligence of mind to guide you. But yeah, so I hope that was helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you both.
Good for you for taking this out in Hungary. That's exciting.
Yeah, doing my best.
Where do you live?
And now I'm in London.
Oh, you're in London. Okay, good.
Anybody else? Anybody else have something on their mind they want to talk about, or something they'd want to share, or some questions? There's a lot of people that we can't see, and I guess there's a way on Zoom to raise your hand on the chat area on the bottom of the screen. I mean, really, Christine and I, in trying to in preparing for sharing with you today, really wanted to be of service to you all and value hearing from you and then interacting with you on your questions. You could see it brought up some rich sharing from both of us and from Boyan.
Just wanted to add also, if you can't find the raise your hand, you can unmute yourself if you scroll down to the bottom left corner of your screen. So feel free to do that as well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the call, and what a pleasure to have you both on this webinar. I work in a Indian reservation in northern Wisconsin, and I love the community, very rich in culture and powwows. But it seems like there's a chronic stressor about history and the injustices with broken treaties. And there's just, it's just a very old story in a way. And I try to be present and look for the insight in conversation. And I wonder if you could address that for me, please.
What's your name?
Joan.
Joan. Hi, Joan.
Hi.
It's funny because that's what Mark and I talked about was we wanted to share the power of hope that the principles bring. And to me, that's kind of what happens when people are colonized and they've gone through a time in history that was very, very insecure and very negative for them. They share a reality with that. And people in the world, I mean, everybody is really caught up in the past. And the trick is to be able to realize that the principles are what allow you to feel mental well-being now, no matter what's happened in the past. And I think when people have gone through horrendous experiences, like in their families or by themselves or wherever, and I'm living in Hawaii. My husband is a almost pure Hawaiian, and I feel like I've learned a lot about how people have treated other people in such awful ways, and that gets carried on throughout centuries, literally centuries. And what I see about the principles is that if people find their health, they find their culture. If people find their health, they find the hope that they have, that they can be a whole person, and what was done to them does not make them less of a person, does not make them broken, does not make them damaged in any way. So it's finding that hope in yourself and seeing that health in people and drawing that out. I guess Roger must be with us today because I'm thinking about the work that Roger Mills did in many communities where people really had just lost hope. And when you ignite that hope in people, they start to create a reality that's perfect for them, that is coming from their wisdom, and they start to live differently and treat each other differently and come from a different place. And as a helper, you've got to have that, you got to see that in people. Like if you get caught up looking at how their thinking creates their depression or their unhappiness, then you're caught in that reality also. But if you step back and see that really it's just thought, and we don't want to say like, let's not pretend like it didn't happen to you, but move beyond what's happened and see that the strength that you have as a human being is what provides that resilience. And that's what the principles are describing, is our ability to live in a state of mental well-being no matter what.
Well, geez, you know, the feeling of what Chris just shared is just moved me. And I really loved that everyone's living from their past. And I think the curative factor of the understanding of the principles is that that past is gone. It's over with. It doesn't exist anymore on the physical plane. The actual history that is given down from generation to generation. And again, living, it's valuable to see that that you can look at your past from different levels of consciousness. And the more you can look at your past from the state of health or the state of insight from the principles, you find ways to take care of that. And that you hadn't seen before. But most people, when they talk about the past, it wakes up memories of that. It wakes up, people start living at the level of consciousness in which it is remembered. And so then that level doesn't allow for wisdom to come through and guide an individual to look at that past in a way that they can make changes and can heal. It doesn't mean to ignore or forget. It doesn't mean to deny cruelty. But it allows people to see where do they want to direct their mind? Where do they want to direct this gift of mind? And the more you can live in feelings of love and understanding, the more you get the intelligence to take care of the past in a healing way, in a creative way. So, for example, when, again, talking about these communities that Roger Mills went into, people in the communities were victims of the community, the cruelty in the community to human beings that lived in the communities. But once the members of the community woke up to their own mental health, they took charge. They found ways to gather together and take care of the community and move it in a whole new direction. It was so powerful. And we can do that with our past. I think that's one of the beautiful things I saw in understanding the principles, that I can take care of the past and the circumstances I was living in a way that moved it forward or healed. So that's what I have to add to that. I hope that was helpful to you, what we had to say.
It was very helpful. Thank you very much.
You know, when I first met Roger Mills, and when I went to this training because everybody else in my clinic was going there, and I didn't want to be the person that was left out. So, and I thought it would also be a good place to find a husband. But when I went, I had like 65 women and 2 men that were all victims of some kind of family violence, mostly sexual abuse in families, incest families, people that had gone through what I call people who had lived in trauma for their early years in life. And some of them that were still living in domestic violence situations. And at the time, I mean, I had 65 clients a week. You have to be doing something right to have that happen. what I was doing is I loved people, and I could see that there was nothing broken about them. I knew that at one level. But I thought that the answer to their happiness would be to make some kind of peace with the past. And that just didn't happen. The more they talked about the past, the more real it got. The more real it got, the more they felt like they were a victim of what had happened to them. Now, that wasn't helpful to them in their life, but that was the best I could see to do. That was as good as anybody was doing in the field at that time. And so I'd have, they'd be upset again. I said, okay, let's talk about your past one more time. Like somehow if we could intellectually understand it or find a way to think about it that wasn't so negative that people wouldn't suffer anymore from it. But when I went to this weekend training, I had such a shift that I realized that what the principles were the cure to mental illness. That was what was eventually going to help us to really have mental illness not be a problem for people. And to me, that was like, wow, I had no idea, but I knew that if people were naturally healthy on the inside, no matter what happened to them, they could find that again. Mm-hmm. And that's what I brought back to my group. So you can imagine that I was like the queen of negativity on Friday. And then Monday, I'm telling everybody to stop thinking about the past and, lighten up and have a better feeling. And so it was like this feeling was coming through me. And everybody, I had 2 clients that stopped working with me. They couldn't go with it. It was too much of a jar for them. But everybody else stayed. And what they said was that the principles were the missing link. They said that. They said, this is the missing piece that we couldn't see in our life. And that year, those women, mostly women, were transformed. They got, I went to 7 weddings that year. I went to, people got jobs, they got careers, they were able to, have relationships with their parents again that they'd never had before. And I didn't do anything. Right? I didn't do anything. I just did the best I could to point people toward that feeling and to stay in that feeling myself. So I'd come home at night and I'd say, oh, I got caught up analyzing the past again, because that was like really a big habit in my head. And that was really the fun of it, really, was to learn from myself in the moment and to not be caught up in the terror, in the suffering of people. Because I thought that if I connected to people at a level of pain and suffering, that love for them in that state would help them. And instead, I realized if I connected with their health, they would get healthy. It was like, oh, this is so much better. And there was no side effect to me. The side effect to me of, trying to fix the past, which is done and over with, can't change it, was that I got burned out. I was terribly burned out. And so that's like providing hope to people is the side effect of that is living in that power of love and aliveness and seeing that no matter what people throw at you, they can live in a beautiful feeling. And that feeling is inside of everybody, no matter what.
Wow, that's beautiful. I knew there was, I knew there was a purpose to be here with you, Christine. That was beautiful. What came to mind for me is this is not talking about the history of barbarism and cruelty that many cultures in our world have experienced through time, but it speaks to remembering the past. So I want to just share with you a little story. I've shared it before, but I had this client she was 85 years old, and she told me, I want to talk with you because I want to live the rest of my life happy. And she'd been depressed for 25 years. And we were talking and talking and talking. We had like about 6 sessions. It was going nowhere. And I got frustrated and I said, Mabel, are you ever happy? And then she said, yeah. And it surprised me. It shocked me. I said, well, gosh, when are you happy? She said, when I wake up. And so I said, when you wake up in the morning, you're happy? She said, yeah. And I said, well, what happens to that? She said, well, by the time my feet hit the slippers, I remember I'm depressed. You see, there it is. She remembers the past. Then when you get to that level of consciousness, all of that level comes to your mind. She said, I remember I wasn't a good wife. I remember, I see that my daughter will have nothing to do with me. I've lost all my friends. Do you see how that is? The minute you let in the past of negativity, you've dropped at a level of consciousness and now you're living there. And that's all people need to see. Sydney says on a beautiful tape, you just want to have the courage to know that when you're in a low mood, it's just your level of consciousness changed. You just want to have the courage to see that. And what that meant for me is you start to understand not to delve into that past. You start to see that the answers you're looking for, how to take care of it even, won't come from when you're disturbed about your past. Not that we don't get there, it's just that you see that is not going to be helpful in terms of what Christine said, of accessing the mental health you need to take care of yourself, having had that past. And then knowing what do you want to do now at a higher level of consciousness about that. So this client of mine, that isn't her name, Mabel, really taught me the power of remembering your past, or remembering your descriptions of yourself as a victim, or even calling yourself the victim and being in post-traumatic stress disorder. Not that you don't have those feelings, but if you continue to visit your thoughts when the thoughts of the past come to your mind, you're gonna live in a lower level of consciousness, and it won't help you find the mental health that you are, that will take care of you about what you've been through, that will heal that. Well,
Mark, I wanted to just share. My mother died 6 weeks short of 100, and she had Alzheimer's for about 18 years.
Yeah.
And when she was initially, having trouble, she struggled with it. Like she was really upset one day. She was in the hospital, and she said, "Chris, I don't remember who I am." And I was so grateful to know the principles, because I knew that the past did not matter, right? But that's how much we're attached to our past, is that literally tells us who we are. And so when she said that, I said to her, I said, "Oh, Mama, it's okay. I remember who you are, and I'll help you. But what you really are is that really beautiful feeling. Remember that feeling?" Because I changed so much. My mother came in and started learning the principles for herself at 76. And she listened to me. I was like, I could just guide her out of that suffering and back in the moment, because I could see that the past, even the positive past, really wasn't really even, wasn't real anymore. So the interesting thing is, as she got more dementia, she actually got happier, because she forgot all of her insecurities. So they used to they'd come up to us and say, "Oh, I bet you had the most idyllic childhood. Your mother is so positive and loving and funny." And we go, "Yeah, she is now." So it's like, it's just kind of interesting to see how much memory has. I mean, you just don't know how much memory is part of our life until you see somebody that has Alzheimer's, because they forget to swallow. they forget things that we just take as, you know, something that's built into us.
Yeah.
So yeah, memory can be a wonderful gift and a really curse.
Well, you know, that really, you know, that's really beautiful in the sense that that's form.
Mhm.
Alzheimer's is our physical form.
Mhm.
And you can see that there was a spiritual essence to Christine's mother, that when the content of thinking is erased, just comes forth, is there. In fact, it's there regardless of the form. And I think that's the beauty of what we want to share here, and the hope of these principles is that you are this spiritual energy despite your thinking, you know, despite your physical form, despite whatever has happened to you in your life. You are this spiritual energy, mind, thought, and consciousness. And it doesn't matter what happens to your physical form, that feeling of what this is will be with you, is within you. And that's the hope. That's the hope for people, that you're more than you think. You know, I'm so grateful for that, because, you know, oh God, if I was what I was, you know, the rest of my life, what I was before I heard Sid, oh my goodness. I'm so thankful I didn't have to be that person. I was a good guy. I was a good guy, but I had a lot of hangups that caused me trouble, you know, and I'm just so grateful I can live beyond that. Oh yeah, Dominic.
Yep.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good,
Great.
I'm good.
And Sid said a couple of things. He said, like, follow the feeling, look for a good feeling. There's those sorts of comments. And then the other thing in the principles where feeling is coming from thought in the moment. So if I'm, depending what I'm thinking, right, I can be depressed, or I can be very happy, or I can feel very worried, or whatever. In your view, what does that mean, or how does that play out for you, to follow the feeling or look for a good feeling, you know, like that?
That's a really good question. I think what happens when you listen really to your wisdom is that feeling he's talking about. It's a state of being, a state of experience that is within us all the time. What we think about, the content of our thinking, is what creates what we would call our emotions and our feelings. And so when people are talking about your experience of life, that you're creating it through thought, that's true, but there's always that deeper state of mental well-being that provides our resilience. And that's what he's talking about, because you can't intellectually get your mind around that. The only thing you can do is, like, when I first learned this, my feeling changed dramatically. I felt like I was on a roller coaster, going like butterflies in my stomach were coming. I was like, oh my gosh. And what it felt like to me was that I was being changed. Well, then about a month went by, and I went down to Florida, the Advanced Human Studies Institute, for a month. In those days, we did a month of training. And it happened that Sid Banks was down there on vacation. So he was doing a talk, and he invited me to come to the talk. And I went to the talk and I could hear that people were talking about living in this feeling. And I knew that there was something that they saw that I didn't see. So I was really interested in what that was. And so I like keep listening. And then all of a sudden one day I got quiet. And I was so quiet, I realized I was exhausted from years of overthinking life. And when I rested, I slept for several days. And when I got up, I had this feeling. And I knew that's what they were talking about. Mm-hmm. And when you're in it, you know you're in it. And then you try to get it, now you're thinking again, right? So you can't do that. So you just have to like know that you're onto something right now. Like that's your question is telling you that at one level you're really onto that feeling. And just start to let it come to you, let it percolate up so that you see what that is.
When I heard Sid talk about listen for a feeling, it was also in a combination with don't listen to my words. And it was helpful to me because he was pointing to the fact that it had nothing to do with ideas. It had nothing to do with the actual words he was sharing, because the words came after the feeling he was in. And so there's all these ideas and words out there about the principles, but he's saying don't listen to those because it'll get you thinking about what does that mean. You just want to listen for a feeling. And it's like what Christine described, it's what you are right now. And so you don't want to listen for words. You want to listen for this feeling, which to me, I describe as contentment. And when I'm close to that feeling, I'm just happy with what is. I'm not thinking about Mark Howard. I'm not thinking, oh, I got to understand the principles more. I'm just in a nice, contented feeling. It may manifest as love. It may manifest as generosity. It may manifest as just having fun. But I want you to see that it's deeper than ideas about the principles or about the ideas that are out there about feelings. It's what you truly are. And he was trying to help, at least this is my thinking, he was trying to help us not listen to the words that came out of him, because the words were already a step beyond the feeling he was in that brought the words. And so that's what you look for. It's really a feeling of not about you. You're not thinking, oh, I need to feel a little better than I am now, or I'm really lacking something. I really need to understand the principles more. It's more a feeling that you just are in this essence of a beautiful feeling of peace, of contentment. And it really doesn't have so much of thinking about yourself.
I think a lot of times if you're at a Three Principles event and when people are really listening and they get quiet, you can feel that. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's that feeling. It's not a particular emotion. It's a feeling of being part of life, where you're safe and you're connected. You can feel it and you can see it, because like you walk around and people smile at you. It's like there's this whole experience that happens. You feel connected. And if you're talking to somebody about the principles, they start to understand what you're saying, even if you don't understand what you're saying. That's the simplicity of it, is that we all know the principles, but the feeling is what allows us to see the depth of the principles or feel the depth of it, and to feel that that's what we are.
You know, that's so important, one part of what you say, that it isn't a particular emotion, you see. It isn't that. It isn't the world of form. And so, so when you look at feeling, at Sid directing you to listen for a feeling, it isn't emotions. It isn't in the world of form. So you just, like Christine mentioned earlier, just be happy for what you've seen and stay reflective, because you're not looking for an emotion. You're looking for that feeling of you, your true nature. And, like being at a conference of the three principles, or with people where there's a nice feeling, all of a sudden you just feel the oneness. You just feel something greater than you. You're not troubled about you. You don't think of you. That's kind of a way to describe it. You know, I was sitting with my stepmother, who had a major stroke and had dementia. I mean, she had really just had delusional thinking, and I always tried to correct her. And even with this understanding, I thought my job was to correct her delusions. And so we were sitting together, her and I, in the front room. She's on a wheelchair, I'm on the couch, and she's saying, "Oh, Mark, Dolly, her friend Dolly, came over yesterday and cooked chicken in this new way. You got to do it." And what she did was she got this chicken, dunked it in boiling water for a minute, and served it. It was delicious. And I just started laughing. I couldn't stop laughing at that. I was just in this deep feeling of just laughing. And then she started laughing. And here we are. She almost laughed herself off the wheelchair. I was almost laughing off the couch. And we had this beautiful connection. You could just feel the connection to one another. You see, and that's it. That beautiful feeling. And I woke up to see that my job wasn't to correct her. My job was to live in this feeling with her. You see? And that was it. That's the feeling, that feeling that you're connected to life. You're connected to humanity. You're a part of something that's greater than our individual thinking.
Yeah, I really get when in those stories how then when Sid said something about not, it's kind of like that connection not filtered through the contamination. I think he said the contamination of thinking or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I listened to those stories and I'm thinking how you could, the minute if you were to add a thought like, well, but that's not right. It didn't actually happen, and I should. Is now you've sort of blocked or taken yourself out of that connection again with thinking. Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. You're seeing it.
Yeah.
Just let that percolate.
And there's no end in that. Like, that's just the beginning of, like, I still am learning what that means to live in the feeling.
Yeah.
Like it's, our little pea brain is so good at making up stuff. And so you start thinking you know what it is. And then you hit something deeper and it's like, oh, I thought I knew what I was talking about. And that's the freedom really, is to let yourself know that there's no end to the learning on this.
Yeah.
There's no end to it, at least as far as I know.
We have, I don't know if your hand is up, Kristen. Is your hand up?
Where are you seeing these people with it?
Over, I don't know, Chris, if I'm even saying your name right. I don't have my glasses on, but anyhow, Kristen, did you have your hand up?
Okay, Bob, can you unmute? There you go.
Okay. One of this feeling that you're talking about is probably the best explanation I heard of it is that we were at a Three Principles conference back in 2014 in Minneapolis, and Steve Adair was there, and he was the first person we really met, and we were in line. And he was telling us what the feeling was like. And he said when he was at the Three Principles class, all of a sudden he said he felt like a love bomb went off, and everybody felt it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's fun when people talk about finding that feeling, because there's, at least I never hear enough stories. I just, that it's just something, because then it wakes it up in you, and you can't really make it happen. That's the deal. You just have to let it happen and be okay with whatever's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's you. It's the essence. It's your spiritual nature. And again, I love what Dominic said. It rang true for me in the sense that we're doing that right now. We have it right now. Were it not for our thinking, So I'm thinking here, trying to share with you, but it's true. Our thinking, which is a beautiful gift, but the more we're into that, the more we're away from that feeling.
When you're listening, Dominic, to Sid's tape, and when he does talks, if you listen, you can hear him. He'll go really high, and the feeling gets really powerful. Then he comes down and makes a joke again. Yeah, and it's because he knew that we couldn't take it. I mean, literally, it took us several years to hear that there were three principles. Like we had 4 or 5 and made up all kinds of stuff about it, and we couldn't hear it. Like, what was wrong with it? I mean, to this day, I'm still like in awe of the fact that we would be listening as good as we could and come up with something totally different. But that is the beauty of it, is the evolution of it, that we just keep seeing more and more about that. It's like what's before thought. And what's before thought is where we all are the same. That's what we are. And then what we experience in life, that's what comes from how we think about it. I think sometimes when we get too focused on our emotions, like as indicators of our thinking, which is true, it is, but it just gets you thinking about your thinking.
Yeah.
And so you just want to forget all that and listen to what Sid talks about with that feeling, and be okay with not knowing. Like when you listen to what Sid says and you have no clue what he just said, you did good listening. Yeah. When you can repeat it back, you're just memorizing words.
Wow, this was what a beautiful feeling I have right now. Bonnie, I just want to check in with you around our timing.
Yeah, we're typically scheduled for an hour, but if you want to stay on, if anyone else has questions, I'm happy to hang out too. Anyone else have questions or comments? Oh, thank you so much. This was really, really wonderful. Really enjoyed this.
I got to tell you that one of the highlights of my life is talking with Mark Howard. And I think that he's one of the most wonderful teachers of this in the world. So I'm really grateful that we did this together. I got a lot out of it.
Oh, wow, that's really beautiful. Thank you. You know, as we were talking, as you were talking, I had the same appreciation of being with you and thinking, Christine and I have had offered uh, a seminar and workshop together because we felt so closely tied to sharing and aligned together. And I'm thinking, my goodness, because of my illness, we weren't able to really go forward with this current one. But my goodness, Christine, we really do have to find a way to make it happen because I just love sharing with you too.
Yeah. It's very selfish on my part doing that.
Well, me too.
Yeah. Plus, I really like also talking with somebody else, because I think that together we all go deeper. That's why we like ask for questions and do that kind of thing. Otherwise, listening to myself, I can do anytime. Just as I just hear the same thing that way. It's not a value.
Well, I just love being with all of you. And I really appreciated people's willingness to share.
Mm-hmm.
It really allowed both Christine and I to share in a very rich way.
Can I do a little commercial?
Sure.
Okay. Lori Karpanis and I wrote a book called The Secret of Love, Unlocking the Mystery and Unleashing the Magic. And one of the things, it's a book that we wrote. It's certainly not the source of the feeling. But what I think the book is helpful to people is it has a lot of stories of people that first knew Sid and how their lives changed. And then it has stories of clients that actually changed. And those stories are what make that book so powerful. And the book is really about the living of the principles, right? Because we don't have trouble. Nobody wants to go to therapy because they can't get along with their computer or their car. But what frequently we struggle with is how we deal with each other, right? And that interaction with other human beings. So it's a lot of times people say, well, I'm not in a relationship, so I'm not going to get it. But it's really about relating to life. It's about living in love, no matter what's going on. So it's now available. It's taken almost a year for this to actually be available. So if you're interested, give it a shot. I'd appreciate it. Let me know what you think.
Thank you. And I will definitely put a link for it underneath the webinar for people who would like to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Anything else you want to add before we finish?
Oh, I'm good.
Oh, I think, Mark, you should talk about your missing link group, or is it full already?
Well, we've had a wonderful turnout for the 4th year of the year-long journey into Sid's Missing Link book. So we do have a Missing Link book group that we're starting for its 4th year in January, where we read the Missing Link together, a chapter a month for the full year. And it's just been beautiful experiences for people. And maybe I'll send you the link for that too, Bonnie, so you can include that and people can take advantage of that. And if you like, you can just email me directly and I'll send you the link.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have it available for the video. How about that, Bonnie?
Sounds great. Thank you so much. I really.
Oh, thank you too for
Thank you.
having us.
Aloha.
Bye, everybody.
And I just want to say that the next webinar is February 13th, and it's with Linda Pettit and Natasha Swerdloff. So I hope you can all join us live then. Thanks again, Mark and Chris.
Bye.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.